Question number 8, Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Housing. What action is he taking to ensure that all available Housing New Zealand houses are tenanted?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, the bulk of homes not tenanted are because of earthquake damage, earthquake risk, and because of Housing New Zealand's major redevelopment program. The first action I am taking is to get real pace into the Christchurch earthquake repair program. The $320 million insurance settlement is enabling us to get on with the repair of the 5,000 homes that were damaged there. The second action is on earthquake buildings in places like Wellington. I'm actually very pleased, Mr Speaker, that we vacated buildings like the Gordon Wilson Flats because after the most recent quakes there was significant damage that could have posed a risk to those tenants. We've got work well advanced on strengthening a number of the state houses in Wellington and a program of work to determine which can be economically repaired and which should be replaced. The third action announced in the budget was a $2.9 billion investment, the biggest in more than 20 years, on improving our overall state housing portfolio. This massive program of work will result in additional vacancies, particularly in areas where we are demolishing groups of old houses and rebuilding far more houses of better quality, more appropriately sized on that same land.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, what action does Housing New Zealand take to remove squatters from their houses and recover rent owed by former tenants?
Mr.
Honourable
Speaker,
Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I'm not familiar of any specific examples of squatting in any of the state houses, but the general intent would be where people have been given a reasonable time to get out of homes, but if the member's got a specific example, I'd be happy to have it drawn to my attention.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Honourable Trevor Mallard.
What action, if any, has he taken to ensure that the approximately $10,800 owed by one former State House tenant is paid?
Honourable Dr
Mr.
Nick
Speaker,
Smith.
unless the member gave me example of the particular tenancy, then I'm not aware of which example the member is giving. State Houses has about 69,000 tenants, and so it's not possible for me to give an instant answer on any one of those cases.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Has Housing New Zealand given any advice to Ministerial Services as to how to recover approximately $10,800 which was not paid when he squatted for over 6 weeks in a $2 million house owned by Ministerial Services?
Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker.
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, when I resigned as a minister last year, myself and my family stayed in the Ministerial House to the end of that term for my kids who were attending school in Wellington. The Ministerial Services gave me consent to leave my personal belongings there until I established a new flat in Hill Street. I would note that it has long been the practice where ministers resign, as occurred when there was a change of government after the 2008 election, that families are given a reasonable amount of time to move. The time when my family moved out was less than 2 weeks after I resigned.
Order. 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 The member has a right to ask questions, but I caution him to think seriously about treading into an issue like this. Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker,
order.
I seek leave to table a document which shows that no rent was paid for that house.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There's none. It can be tabled. Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Is it true that when National became the government in 2008, I then said to the then outgoing Prime Minister that she should feel free to stay at Premier House as long as she wanted, without rent, to allow a smooth transition and for allow her to pack up with her family?
Order, order. Just before that question is answered, I don't think there's actually any ministerial responsibility to the Minister. I think on this order, The question has been asked, but I can't see there's a responsibility to the Honourable Dr Nick Smith as Minister of Housing to answer that particular
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Is this a point of order?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
A point of order, the Right Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, you saw fit for me to answer equivalent questions about my circumstances in respect of my ministerial house, and so I think it is appropriate I be allowed to ask the Prime Minister's question.
No, order. We're dealing with a question that was raised by the Prime Minister to yourself as
Correct. Minister.
Are you seeking the right to answer that question?
Yes, I am.
On that basis, I'm going to allow the Minister to answer. Order! 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 I have ruled that on the basis that the Honourable Minister wants to answer the question, I am going to allow... And if there's further interjections coming from that side of the House, I will be asking both members to remove themselves. Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the attitude I've felt consistently from the Prime Minister, whether it was for the families and members of opposite when they ceased to become ministers, or my own experience, was one of sympathy to ministers' families. I had children at school in Wellington, and I appreciated the Prime Minister's office allowing those children to stay at school for the 2 weeks to the end of term.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Order! Supplementary question, Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker.
Order! I've called the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, will he now set a good example to Housing New Zealand tenants by paying the $10,800 rent, as well as the unreimbursed power, the housekeeper services, the weekly sheet changing and laundry services, the security services and the gardening services from when he stayed in his $2 million former ministerial house after he resigned?
Honourable Dr Nick Smith, in as far as he has ministerial responsibility.
Mr Speaker, at the time I sought advice from both ministerial services and parliamentary services, I was told that I would not be able to claim a parliamentary allowance for the period that the Prime Minister gave me to relocate my family as a backbencher, and so I was not claiming parliamentary allowances for the period of grace that the ministerial services allowed me for my family to move.
Order! Order! Point of order, the Honourable Jerry Brownlee. Order!
Mr Speaker, I wonder if you would be able to assist the opposition in their quest to gain these efficiencies for the state by perhaps ruling that if a leader of the opposition publicly announces their intention to relinquish that position and then fails to turn up into Parliament, that they may not also claim the ministerial salary and various other entitlements that go with that job.
Order. 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 That is not a valid point of order, but it goes to show to Parliament where we go to when anybody tracks this line of questioning. Question number 9. Order! 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 Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question